Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's time for the Brown Sports Bag from the heart of the Barrens, a weekly local sports machine. Alongside John Butler, here's your host, James Brown.
Well, John, we're back again this week. Should be a lot to talk about, really. I mean, it was a busy week in the land of sports. We got the high school basketball season tipped off last Monday. Caverna played a couple of games there, and then on Tuesday, both Barren County and Glasgow played. They all played on Friday. A bunch of them played on Saturday. They tried to get in all the games they possibly could. So that's where we're going to start out. We're going to talk a little bit about some high school basketball. I guess we'll start on the boys' side because we had mentioned last week, or you had mentioned last week, if Coach Warren Cunningham and the Trojans got through their first 4 games and they were 2-2, then Warren would feel really good about that because it's 4 tough teams to open the schedule. They're 1-2 at the moment. They play at Hopkinsville tomorrow night. They had a tough game to start out with against Warren Central. Everybody knew it would be a tough game. They bounced back on Friday. They beat Elizabethtown at Elizabethtown, and on Saturday they played, I think, what a lot of people think may be the best team in the state or one of the best teams in the state in North Laurel, and maybe the best player in the state in Reed Shepard. He's already committed to Kentucky.
I don't think they're the best team in the state. I think they're top 20.
Yeah.
I don't have any doubt that they've got the best player in the state.
Is that right?
Yes, Reed Shepard.
Yeah, so I mean he had a great game against the Trojans. I think you were telling me before we came on the air, Warren was pretty impressed by him because he just does everything as a player.
He had 5 threes, had a dunk, probably had 6 or 7 assists. He's very unselfish, which sometimes with superstar high school players they're not.
Right.
But he is. So Warren, I was talking to Coach Cunningham today, and he thought he was legit, not overhyped, legit, the real deal, and still just a junior.
Well, and North Laurel appeared to be legit in terms of Barren County competing against them because that was the.
I think they were Coach Cunningham was disappointing. I mean, they got run out of the gym, 77-40, and the score was. Sometimes the scores are a little misleading. This wasn't misleading.
Right.
I mean, it was 27 points at halftime, running clock right at the end of the third quarter, 36. I mean, it was really a no contest. And Barron struggled to score, which they've struggled all week to score, to be honest with you, find balance in scoring. And if you're going to beat North Laurel, like Greenwood beat North Laurel the night before.
Yeah, that was a shocker.
You got to score. Mm-hmm. And Greenwood put up 88, 89 against them, and you got to score to beat the Greenwoods and teams like that. And the guys were never in the game.
This has kind of been an issue.
Now, in fairness, I just want to say this.
Yeah.
It's their 3rd game, and that's not a big deal that week because you can do that in high school, but they went – one was at Warren Central, one was at E-Town, and driving to North Laurel, all 3 bus trips. That's not easy your first week against 3 good opponents all on the road, traveling from really all parts of this. That was not an easy –
Yeah.
You still would have hoped that we would have competed better against North Laurel. But still, that's a rugged early schedule.
We'll talk about the girls here in a little bit, but I thought that was also an issue with the Trojanettes on Saturday when they played Metcalfe County. I thought fatigue may have been a factor there for them as well.
Losing Raven Ennis didn't help.
Yeah, early in the game, that certainly didn't help either. But back to the boys. I think I would say this, and I think Coach Cunningham would agree with this. He had 2 concerns coming in the season, as he told us. One was taking all these parts and meshing them together. Yes, they have a lot of veteran players, a lot of experienced players, but Aiden Eichen missed most of last year. There are a lot of different people in different roles. They graduated their point guard, Gavin Withrow, knew that was going to be an issue, trying to find the right person that could kind of handle the offense, get things set up, make sure that they stay calm and settled. As much as anything last year, I thought what Gavin did as point guard was settle the team down a lot of times in difficult situations. We look at stats of point guards and we look at all these different things, but in the end, the truth of the matter is their real role on the court is to be an extension of the coach and to kind of take care of some things within the game that a coach doesn't need to call a timeout to deal with and all that. So they're trying to find that person, and that may have been the most evident thing during the course of the week, certainly against Warren Central, trying to find the people that could handle the ball and beat the pressure, but not just automatically score necessarily and give the ball back to Warren Central because you're not trying to be in a foot race with them. So he's still trying to find that part, and then the people trying to find their right roles within the team. So as you pointed out, it's just the first week. we knew they were going to be working on this, and it's going to take some time, and probably through the Christmas holidays, tournaments, and that kind of stuff. Is that kind of how you saw the first week there for the Trojans?
I agree. I think there's a couple of issues. I do think it's point guard play, trying to figure out. They're experimenting with different players. The loss of Gavin Withrow, 4-year star at the point,
right, and
has been an issue. Lack of scoring. I mean, to beat these teams, Barron's put up 55, 40, and 58. And got to score better than that. And then really the lack of outside shooting. Tate Pointer has really been the only one to make threes. He made 5 against E-Town.
Yeah.
But did not make any against Warren Central, and I think he made a couple against North Laurel. But other than that, we have Barron has not had a lot of consistent outside shooting. And when you are a team that primarily a lot of the kids do well around the rim, drivers, Aiden Nigan's a driver, Mason Griggs a driver, you need space for that purpose.
Yeah.
And right now they've struggled with rolls, as you mentioned, and so I do think it's a little bit of the good news about playing 3 tough teams early. It exposes your weakness.
Yeah.
If you play 3 teams that you just blow them out, sometimes you may get an over. I think Georgia, and we talk about college football.
Yeah.
Just look who they played leading up to Alabama the last 2 or 3 weeks. Nobody.
Right.
And I think sometimes you get maybe an over confidence in what you're good at, but not what you're bad at. Mm-hmm. And Barron has been. I think Warren knew what the issue was going to be, but maybe the players needed to see it. So, it's good it happened early, like Glasgow football this past year, getting beat by Woodford County early. Yeah. Have time to try to make corrections. So I do think, there's no question Barron is going to get better, but it's the roles, it's responsibility, a little bit of point guard direction, I think you could say, and somebody other than Tate Pointer is eventually going to have the confidence to make some shots.
Well, yeah, because as they play in their district and in the region against the regional opponents and that kind of thing, everybody's going to know that about them.
Sure they will, and they will. And, of course, they made 25 turnovers against Warren Central. Now, Warren Central plays teams differently than most teams. They've got the athleticism and the quickness to extend pressure.
Good size, too.
Good size. Most teams can't do that. And that's a tough opening game without your true point guard.
Yeah.
That's not the ideal way to start to get confidence, but it is what it is. But Barron's got a ways to go. I mean, they are they're lucky it's early in the year, and they'll have a hard time at Hoptown on Tuesday. I mean, I was kidding Warren. I said the only place he hadn't gone is to Cincinnati.
Is he looking for a game up there?
Yeah, he's been to E-Town, the western part of the state, with Hoptown, and went to halfway up the mountains to North Laurel.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe he needs to find a game up there in the Cincinnati area so he can cover all the corners of the state.
That's correct.
Meanwhile, the Glasgow Scotties started out, they rolled over their first 2 opponents. Obviously, not as tough a schedule as Barron opened with, but so like we've mentioned on here sometimes, it's how you beat someone that tells you a lot about what you're doing, and they certainly beat the 2 teams they played effectively and scored well doing it.
Yeah, I mean, they've had running clocks both games. The Logan County 62-33, not a surprise. Logan struggled last year.
Yeah.
Just got out of the football playoffs, and plus lost Woodard to Russellville, and I think Logan will struggle all year. And if you can't score, you can't beat Glasgow.
Right.
Because that's the strength of Glasgow is they play free, they shoot it really well, and they play at a fast tempo.
Yeah, do you want to talk about 2 teams that are completely different in terms of makeup? It's the Trojans and the Scotties right now.
It is right now. It's exactly right. So, where they fit in the middle when they play each other.
Be interesting.
Which style wins out. That's correct. Yeah. And then I don't know a lot about Russell County. I'm more familiar with Logan, but that's a good win, 81-42 over Russell County. That's a blowout because Russell County traditionally has good basketball teams.
Yeah.
Traditionally. Now, it's been a couple years since they've been a real threat to the region, but still, that's 2 wins, and I don't know what to take from that other than it just reaffirms that I thought Glasgow was going to be good. Mm-hmm. I mean that's the deal. We know Sam Bowling's good, and he's been good so far this year, and Jackson Poland has proven that he can score. Yeah, and he's done that. But I think Ashton Serwinski, he's played well.
Yeah,
so they'll get the acid test tonight when they have Warren Central. because Warren Central is is legit, athletic, big, and so forth. And Glasgow doesn't have to beat them, but they got to compete with them.
Yeah,
and that will tell me a lot about where Glasgow is right now.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because I would think Glasgow has enough different people who can handle the ball. They don't necessarily have to have Jackson Poland have the ball in his hand all the time against Warren Central's pressure, because Bowling and several others that they have can handle the ball and handle the pressure. It'll be curious, though, to see how they defend Warren Central, because Warren Central is going to be big inside, so that's one of the places that Glasgow is going to have to figure out how to match up. They're not big as a team.
Right.
Generally, Warren Central can shoot the ball pretty well from outside. They did not against Barren, but I think that had a lot to do with Barren's defense.
Yep.
So it's going to be interesting to see how they close out on that. I'll be over there tonight. It'll be an interesting game. The girls' game is first. It's at 6 p.m., and the Lady Scotties are looking to get a win. Before we get to the girls real quick, the Caverna Colonels, they split their week last week. They lost at Hart County in overtime, and to be honest with you, they were just terrible basically in the first quarter. They could not score. They struggled handling the ball, that kind of stuff. Hart County played pretty well. They came back and played pretty well as the game closed out. They just could not get over the hump. They've got some good pieces. It'll be interesting to see how it shapes up in their district. I don't actually think Hart County was the better team. I just think maybe Caverna played really poorly early in that game to the point that they just could not get out of that hole. So, we'll see how it goes for them as they go along. Let's go over to the girls' side. We'll start with the Trojanettes because I've already mentioned the fact that I thought when I saw them play Saturday against Metcalfe County early in that game, even before Raven went out, they looked a little bit sluggish in that game. And, basically they had played at Elizabethtown, come home from that game from the night before, and 14 hours later, they were playing another game because they played at noon on Saturday.
Yeah, well, they beat Warren. First of all, they opened up with a blowout at Warren Central, 63-19, no contest, and then went to E-Town, and E-Town is traditionally a top 20 team. Well, they're not this year, to be fair. They lost their best two players. One transferred twice, and the other one graduated.
Yeah.
And they handled E-Town 49-31. Didn't really have any trouble, but the Metcalfe County game was a battle the whole way.
Yeah.
And Metcalfe with the new coach, has struggled. They had lost to Monroe the night before.
Yeah.
Lost to Warren East, and their only win was against I think Allen. So I think it's a little surprising the game was close. It wouldn't have surprised me early. I mean, before how Metcalfe had played that week, because Metcalfe has everybody back.
Yeah.
They have 4 players back. They're mainly their top scorers are all back.
Yeah.
But they did compete with them, went right down to the last minute of the game. Now, Raven Ennis did not play the last 3 quarters. She turned her ankle.
Yeah, she got hurt basically in the first 3 minutes.
Yeah, so she did not play, and that's clearly a factor. But Abby Varney, she played really well. I think she had 19 points and had a big steal late.
Hit the basket after that, and that put them up to stay.
Yeah, she's had a good start. Katie Murphy played well. She's shooting the ball real well. I think Katie's 4 of 5 from 3. Barron's shooting 50% from 3.
Yeah.
Now, they don't shoot a lot.
Yeah.
But they're at 50% right now. Ennis obviously makes shots, and Katie Murphy, who's doesn't shoot a lot, but 4 out of 5 from 3 in 3 games is good.
Yeah,
and Addison London can make shots. She's a good 3-point shooter, and it's nice to see Macy Lockhart back. She looks pretty healthy. She'll become more healthy as the year goes on.
Yeah,
but she's a big part to Barren County because I don't know if she's a natural post, but she's got to play inside.
Yeah,
because they really lack size inside.
Yeah, there were a couple of things in that game that I kind of started wondering about because Barren only has 10 players, and she's got.
We only play 5 at a time.
I understand you can only play 5 at a time, but I sometimes think to myself, the fatigue effect, especially on back-to-back games. I mean, it just maybe that was a factor. I don't know. I mean, I know. A lot of coaches have different philosophies, and a lot of folks look at it like I just want the 5 best players, and the rest doesn't really matter.
Right. Well, ever how many they had, they were 1 less after Raven went out.
Yeah, so they had 9 actually after that, and so it was an interesting game. As you mentioned, Abby Varney did step up, and she had some big plays down the stretch there to win the game for them. They defended well throughout the game. Even after Raven went down.
Yeah, they normally do. Their press is very effective. If and they normally get a lot out of the press.
Yeah,
and they got not as much as normal, but they got some key turnovers late in the game against Metcalf. Metcalf should not turn the ball over much. I mean, they're basically 4 guards.
Yeah,
and they're not an easy team to press as long as they get them out of the trap. But give Metcalf some credit because after I know they were disappointed losing to Monroe the night before. That's not a good loss by Metcalf. So they came down and battled the Trojanets the whole way.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the Lady Scotties, they also played on Saturday. I said that Barren played at noon. They played at 3 o'clock. Glasgow played at 1 on Saturday.
Yeah.
Or at noon on Saturday, whichever way it worked out. And so the Lady Scotties, they're 0-3, but I will say this. They're doing good things. They cannot hit a shot. And so kind of what seems to happen to them is that eventually your defense is going to give up something if you just can't score, and they just cannot seem to make shots right now.
Well, you can't win when they only scored 35 against Logan.
Yeah.
Only scored 27 against Russell County, and only scored 29 against Greenwood. It's impossible to win games that way. I mean, you can't win that way. They're only shooting 21% from the field, and I think 14% from 3. You would think those numbers will go up. I mean, they can't go down. and the problem with that is when you struggle offensively, it just takes the life out of your confidence-wise. Because I don't care who you are as a basketball player. Basketball players want to score.
Yeah.
Because that's what makes the game fun. And all of a sudden, when you're scoring, you're playing better defense. Mm-hmm. And it is nothing more frustrating than, A, turn the ball over, and B, not scoring. Mm-hmm. And you can guard and guard and guard and guard and guard, but if you can't score, nothing you do looks good.
Right.
And, I mean, just nothing looks good. So, it's not a good start for them. I know they're disappointed 0-3 and been not real close in a lot of games. Defensively, they played good, but they're going to have to start making shots. I think Chloe Hale's averaging like 9 a game, and Coach Cassidy's daughter, Mia Cassidy, is averaging like 9 a game. And so they got the parts that you would think will be able to score, but they got to get through this tough stretch right now. They can beat Warren Central if they can make some shots.
Yeah.
Warren Central has struggled to score as well.
Yeah.
So, sometimes when the light goes on, when you start just make a few shots, it's amazing how that confidence
right.
not only spreads to that player making shots, sometimes it spreads to the team.
And another player I thought that actually played well on Saturday was Cadence Bird. She's their primary point guard, handles the ball well. They had 21 turnovers in their first game of the season, but they also forced 21 turnovers against Logan County. They've done some things, with their pressure and that kind of stuff to try to get some opportunities. They just have struggled to just finish those shots. And so I'm with you. Once maybe if they start a game and they make a couple, the light goes on and maybe things just totally change for them.
Well, 1 week is 1 week.
Yeah.
If this continues over weeks and weeks and weeks, there's a problem.
Right.
But, you can have ups and downs for a week or two. But, if we're saying the same thing after 10 games, then now we have a problem.
Well, I would say that they do have a limitation in the fact that they do not have a player that seems to be able to kind of get their own shot.
Yep.
And when they played Greenwood on Saturday, that seemed to be a key difference. Leah Trin was able to get her own shot and score. And right now they're having to score all their baskets are going to have to come from things they're doing as a team.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's just hard to do.
It is. That's exactly hard. I mean, exactly right. You can only coach players. You can only design so many sets. You can only do so much. Really, oftentimes what the game comes down to is one individual player make a play for themselves or others. Mm-hmm. You got to be able to break somebody down, make a kick, or go by somebody and score, or create. And you can design the crap out of things, but it really comes down to players making plays. I haven't seen Glasgow play, so I really don't know. Mm-hmm. But be fair, there's not a ton of players right now. And now Bowling Green's got several on their team.
Yeah.
Barron's got some people who can make some individual plays. Mm-hmm. Metcalf's got some individual players. But there's the girl from Greenwood, but a lot of teams are in that same kind of boat.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Caverna's kind of got the opposite problem. They have a player who can do just about everything in Kayliana Richardson. I think she had 28 in the first game, 25 the other night, or 25 on Saturday against Warren East. They're 1-2. They also lost at Hart County because they played a player in Dia Bradley who can do just about everything.
Yeah, they've got off to a good start, Hart County.
Yeah, I mean they might be the best team in that district. It'll probably be between them and Greene County. I guess we'll see.
I think Hart is by far right now.
Yeah, and so that was a tough matchup. But they also kind of have a group of people that they're trying to put together, and
they have no size though. Hart's not a big
no, they're
team.
not, but they can shoot.
Yeah,
they can shoot.
Yep.
But yeah, so the Lady Colonels, they're trying to put some things together. I think they'll be a team that will improve as the season goes along. Corn's teams usually do this. They run some good stuff, and once they kind of get into whatever it is they're trying to accomplish, they usually do pretty well. They have in recent years. But yeah, Kayleana Richardson, she's 6 feet tall, maybe 6'1". She might be taller than I am, John. But yeah, she can really do some things on the court. Pretty fun player to watch. All right, it's Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, John, the college football season is, nearing its summit or something of that nature. We got all the meaningless games out of the way. Your favorite time of the season starts December 17th. It's when the bowl games start.
That's when the meaningless games. No offense.
There are a lot of meaningless games before we get to the meaningful ones, aren't there?
That's right.
First, let's talk about the Hilltoppers. Man,
I messed up last week. I was pretty confident last Monday in the studio. I thought they would win.
I did too.
I thought they would roll. I'm glad I did not make a mythical wager because they got.
You'd be giving up your house.
Yeah, I mean the score was not indicative of the game. They were down 41-13, and I know they made a late rally to make it somewhat competitive, and it's nice they did. But I mean, they just they got run all over by San Antonio.
They have played them twice, and what's his name? Sincere McCormick, I think is his name, has run all over them both times.
About 500 yards in 2 games.
Yeah, I mean, he just has absolutely killed the Hilltoppers.
And the Hilltoppers have made early mistakes, one in the kicking game and an interception return, and they couldn't get back into the game. Do I think? Well, I mean, it's hard to say that Western Kentucky's better than San Antonio. They've lost to them twice, so it's kind of hard to make that comment. But it is disappointing because I thought they would win it. And, disappointed they didn't win it, but it is what it is. And they still had a fantastic year, and especially offensively. I mean, they were fun to watch.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Bailey Zappi, he's got a shot he's got a shot for the all-time record in touchdown passes with this extra game in the bowl.
Yeah, and actually yardage.
I mean, he's got a chance, and they're going to be winging it.
Yeah.
Against they play Appalachian State in where is it? Is it in the Bahamas or where is it?
No, they are.
No, it's at Boca Raton.
Yeah, they're playing at Boca Raton.
That's a great deal. I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, who doesn't want to go there?
Well,
I mean, if you're going to play a bowl game, that's a good one.
Well, I mean, that's what they do. Usually get the best bowls in terms of going to a location for a bowl game. I mean, because they've gone to the Bahamas to play in a bowl game, and they've gone down to Boca Raton.
And they're, if you're going to run one of these bowl games, Western Kentucky is an attractive offer because they play a style that I think would be entertaining for TV and so forth.
Right. Back to that game, the thing that I think got me was the fact that I don't know how it is that the Hilltoppers could not figure out in the second meeting that the guy that they needed to stop was the running back.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously they knew they needed to, but they just could not. And they couldn't do anything about him, and their mistakes they made put them in too big of a hole.
Couldn't stop Army either.
That is true.
Maybe that was ultimately the weakness was the running game. Maybe.
Yeah, the run defense couldn't slow people down. Because their defense looked good in these last few games, but they were playing against teams that could not really run the ball.
And they were playing from ahead.
Yes, there's that too.
Which is different. We get ahead, the other team can't.
Just ram it down your throat.
That's correct.
Now, you mentioned it ended up, the final score was 49-41. They got back in the game. They had an excellent chance because they were down 8. I think it was 42-34, I think is what the score was. And the Roadrunners had the ball on their side of the field. I think it may have even been, 4th and 7 or something. And they went for it. And I was listening to the broadcast on Actually, it was on our station here. It was playing here. And, I think it was Terry Obie was saying, I can't believe they're going to go for it right here. They went for it. They converted that fourth down, the Roadrunners did, and then went down and scored off of that. And I know WKU scored again after that, but basically that kind of sealed the fate. It was a huge gamble by the coach for
smart gamble because I think he realized at that time that they probably wasn't going to stop Western Kentucky.
Right. Yeah, it was one of those moments.
So punting it to them was going to give the Toppers a chance to tie it. It's one of those. You do that when sometimes you go against Tom Brady. You take a little bit extra chances. Just don't want him to have the ball.
Yeah, so as we mentioned, they get to play in a bowl game against Appalachian State December 18th.
It's a good program.
Yeah, interesting matchup with them. That'll be an interesting game because they're a newly to the top level of college football. I think 4 years, maybe 5 years.
Yeah, they've made the successful transition.
Yeah, and they're in the Sun Belt, so that'll be an interesting matchup. Then the Kentucky Wildcats. Now they got a gem of a bowl game. It looked like to me. Playing the Citrus Bowl against Iowa on January 1.
That's Orlando, is that right?
I believe that's correct, yes.
Yeah, a very favorable matchup. I'm not impressed with Iowa at all.
Yeah, both of them are 10-3, I think.
Yeah, but I've seen Iowa a couple of times. I'm not impressed with the quarterback. They have trouble scoring.
I don't have a whole lot of faith in the Big Ten teams, to be honest with you.
I think Kentucky will win that game. Kentucky's passed their track record here recently in bowl games has been good, and I don't see Iowa scoring very many points, and I think Kentucky will.
Yeah, I think it's a good matchup, and it's great January 1 bowl for them. So I think that's all bodes well for the program in terms of profile and that kind of jazz. And if they win the game, against a Big Ten opponent, that's also fantastic.
Right.
The Cardinals, Louisville there, they get to take on Air Force in the First Responder Bowl on December 28th. I didn't even bother to check to see where this is, but I think it's in Colorado or something. So that's an interesting matchup, I think, for them as well.
I guess. I'm not interested.
Well, you're sitting in the moment as a Louisville fan.
I just don't think they're even if I wasn't a Louisville fan, that game does nothing for me because Louisville was 6-6.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
6-6, and
they have no real identity whatsoever.
No, they got a quarterback that can play at times, but you take him away, Louisville's got issues. Their athletic director is flirting with Florida State.
That's what I was going to.
There's a lot of chatter still against their coach Satterfield.
Yeah.
They're in a kind of a. It's I have no idea what's going to happen, but that game does not interest me.
Yeah, it may be the least interesting thing going on at Louisville at the very moment, which is kind of a shame for the football program.
Well, in fairness, it's the least interesting the football, but women's basketball is good. Volleyball is number one in the nation.
Yes, well,
and it's amazing how those things get overlooked sometimes. And actually, the men's basketball team's coming off a win.
Yeah, I'm guilty of that myself, overlooking those other things because you're right. It's not that there aren't good things going on at Louisville. Right. It's just that these things are being overshadowed by their AD flirting with going to Florida State. The debate about Satterfield. Yep. The bowl game not necessarily being all that fantastic of a bowl game in terms of interest.
Right.
Just those things in general. Meanwhile, the college football playoffs are set. Here's what I'm going to say to start with.
All right.
I was just certain they were going to find some way to leave Cincinnati out. I just figured they were going to try to figure it out. But I guess if they were undefeated and they played real well against Houston in their conference championship game, it would have been, I don't know. Would it have mattered if they left them out?
No, they were in. Oklahoma State, when they got beat by Baylor.
There's that.
Then, Notre Dame was not going to skip over Cincinnati since Cincinnati beat them. And then whatever the crazy comments the NCAA director said when Notre Dame's coach left, that's probably going to knock them out of consideration.
Yeah.
Like, what? So just continue to punish players. That's kind of what they've done for the last 50 years. So I thought Cincinnati was in, and the surprising thing of all that happened last weekend was Alabama wore out Georgia.
Yeah.
Surprising in terms of this, that Georgia looked extremely good this year. Mm-hmm. Defensively awesome. But they still played the same offense they played the last so many years that doesn't appear to be explosive enough when they need to have points. Mm-hmm. They've yet to prove to me to have a high-caliber quarterback and an explosive enough offense. When things are going their way, when they're ahead, they can run the ball down people's throat. They're good. But it looked like, to me, sort of the same old Georgia.
What's interesting, if you look at those two programs, Nick Saban
changed. He changed.
Yes. He saw the writing on the wall. He changed the types of players he started bringing in, especially at quarterback and wide receiver.
Open it up.
Yep. Because, I mean, they were just like Georgia. They were a ram it down your throat with these big old guys, the Derrick Henrys and that jazz of the world.
And he figured out he couldn't keep up that way.
Yeah.
The game had changed.
Well, I think as much as anything, he couldn't recruit players he really wanted to be able to recruit with that type of offense. He could get maybe some of the linemen, maybe the running backs, but he couldn't get the people who could come stretch the field for him.
Right.
And so, yeah. And meanwhile, Kirby Smart at Georgia, as you said, hasn't changed one lick.
Well, he had Justin Fields, but didn't play him. He did.
Maybe he's a bad evaluator of talent when it comes to quarterbacks.
Or like a lot of defensive coordinators, they like to control the game.
Yes.
And one of the things, what helps the defense? Well, when the offense controls the game.
Mm-hmm.
And, and eventually I think he's going to have to make that adjustment.
Yeah.
Now, they may win it all. I'm not sure they can beat Michigan.
Man,
I mean,
I go back to what I just said. I don't trust any Big Ten teams.
I agree with that. But Michigan has played well down the stretch, and they've scored points. Maybe they won't beat them.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I don't have any doubt that Alabama's going to beat Cincinnati. I'm hoping Cincinnati will win just because it's the underdog.
Be fantastic.
Just the underdog. I'm not against Alabama, but I just like to see, a team that's fought their way and got there. I don't have any misgivings to think they will win.
Mm-hmm.
It's. I hope it's a competitive game. The last thing I want to see, I don't want to see Cincinnati get blown out.
Yeah. I will say this, though. Going back to the Alabama versus Florida game, the quarterback they have, Alabama, I was pretty impressed with him in that game.
Alabama versus? When
they played Florida. That was one of the close game earlier in the season that they kind of struggled with against Florida. Turns out Florida wasn't that good. Alabama just had a bad day. That's why it was close. I think the final was, 22-20 or something?
Yeah, well, Alabama has been tested. That's what I like about them. They've been, the Auburn game went right down to the wire.
Mm-hmm.
But Arkansas went right down to the wire. These are the recent games, and this quarterback for Alabama he's tremendous down the stretch. I mean, he's tremendous. And Georgia has not. They blew out Georgia Tech the week before. They were not. They haven't had a close game for I don't know when.
Well, again, in the SEC,
they're in the wrong. They're in the SEC East, which is totally different this year.
Well, I think it's been totally different for a few years now.
Right.
The West has definitely been the stronger side of the SEC for a few years.
So sometimes you can get comfortable winning the way they won, but that may not be the way to beat the elite teams. You got sometimes your quarterback has to make more plays.
Yeah. Well, and I'm with you. I just don't see Cincinnati beating Alabama.
I don't either.
But they may be the most interesting matchup with them in a lot of ways because Cincinnati's got some explosive players on their team. I just don't know that they have the ability to slow down Alabama one bit, and I don't think they can keep pace with them like that.
I don't either.
Because if Georgia can't, then maybe nobody can.
Cincinnati's got a better quarterback.
Yeah, well, I think Cincinnati probably has a better offense than Georgia.
They do. I say that, but that may not be true. But
they put up the points on Notre Dame.
They did.
That's their only loss all year. So, but obviously Brian Kelly didn't have any faith that he could win a national title at Notre Dame, so he decided to join the evil SEC. So we'll see how that goes.
He jumped ship. That's right. I guess he thinks he can get better players at LSU. Maybe he can.
I will tell you this. I don't think his reign at LSU is going to last very long because those folks down in Louisiana, I don't think he's going to be to their liking.
Well, he's got 95 million reasons to go.
Well, I'm not saying he's not going to get paid.
He's going to get paid, guaranteed money.
Yeah, he's going to also be collecting that money a couple of years from now whenever he's hanging out somewhere else.
It's the beauty of college sports. In high school, when they say, we don't want you anymore, you're just you got nothing.
Yeah.
In college, they pay you not to coach. What a great system.
Yeah, in high school, you get the unemployment slip so you can go file for your unemployment if you can't get another job right away.
Right.
In college, you don't have to do anything but go buy a yacht.
That's exactly right.
Here's the thing, John. Our first bowl game, December 17th, Middle Tennessee plays Toledo in the Bahamas.
Okay.
At noon. I'm sure you'll be tuned in.
No.
All right, it's Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, John, while we were just talking about college football, ironically enough, we're kind of in the middle of the early stages of the college basketball season. Conferences haven't really gotten rolling yet. Most of the powerhouse programs are still playing a bunch of duds that are making a little money off of them. But we did have some interesting games, I guess. No, not really. We did have an interesting game, I guess. Louisville had a pretty interesting week because they did play at Michigan State. They lost that game 73-64. Then they did play a conference game against North Carolina State, beat them 73-68.
Yeah, those are, I mean, in fairness, Louisville playing Michigan State, North Carolina State, that's legit.
Yeah, those were across all of the schedules last week.
That's legit.
They played a pretty legit schedule. I think like Gonzaga and Duke also played pretty legit schedules last week.
Right.
So, I mean, there were some. Meanwhile, Kentucky took the week off for the most part. I think they played last Monday night, but they took the week off, and I'm not sure they have anything legit on their schedule at the moment. But real quick, let's talk about that Louisville game first, I suppose, the Louisville games. We mentioned, we talked about this, that we liked with Mason Faulkner on the team, on the floor, what he does in terms of settling down and that kind of stuff, because their two starting guards still can't shoot a lick. But they have found L. Ellis, who has come in and put some points on the board for him, and I think played pretty well for the Cardinals.
He doesn't pass a lick.
Well, that's true. I mean, they still don't. They're still like they have nothing that meshes together well.
No, there's the one person that meshes well is Cross because he's a shooter and he plays hard on defense.
Yeah,
and if it wasn't for him, they would have lost to North Carolina State. Mm-hmm. He made the tying three and the game-winning three.
Yeah,
he's the one that has to play.
Right.
I don't put whoever else you want around him, but he's got to play Chris Mack. Okay?
Yeah.
And that was a big win as a conference game. They were up at half and then lost the lead, and it was at North Carolina State, and then Cross made some incredible plays down the stretch. He's a transfer from Miami.
Yeah.
So that's a big win because they did not play well at Michigan State. 73-64 is a little deceiving. Mm-hmm. Horrible shooting game, which I've said that a lot about Louisville, and the only player that made any shot was L. Ellis. Is that his name? L.
Ellis.
Yeah, and his shots he made shots with, I mean, he was just bringing them down and just launching threes and drives. It really wasn't in any flow of anything or anything like that. I don't think you can win that way. No. But how they played against North Carolina State looked much better. Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, I mentioned that Kentucky took the week off. They play tomorrow night against Southern University. They play the Jaguars. The interesting thing about that game to me is they should have a battle of bands at halftime because Kentucky would definitely lose that. They're going to win the basketball game.
Southern has a good band?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
One of the best bands in the world, apparently.
Okay. Didn't know that.
You've never seen the Bayou Classic then, huh?
I have not paid attention to it. But I know some of those schools have good bands. But
yeah. They have the battle of the bands at the Bayou Classic between Grambling and Southern.
Okay. All right.
Meanwhile, WKU beat EKU 85-80.
Good win. That was a good game. I watched some of that.
Yeah, they had, 3 players out for that game, basically?
Yeah, Anderson was out with COVID reasons. Mm-hmm. One of the transfers did not play. He had a back issue. Mm-hmm. Of course, Zion Harmon still has not played.
Yeah.
So they were, and Butts played. He was one of the transfers, played about 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. So they relied on Justice, who's been incredible. They had 18, 19 plays.
The most important eligibility ruling probably in the history of WKU basketball.
He's been unbelievable.
Yeah.
The point guard, who's been great, the guard
Davian McKnight.
Out of Collins,
yeah.
He had 20-something points. He's just going to wear down. I mean, they've got nobody to replace him.
Yeah.
That's where Harmon would have helped.
Yeah.
And the 7'5" kid is really playing well. Mm-hmm. I mean, for somebody that only averaged 2 points a game in high school and 4 in junior college, he looks like a player. Most of his points are dunks, but he is 7'5". He does guard people.
He's not just a stick figure.
Stansberry is doing a good job. He's playing a lot of zone with him, which probably keeps him out of foul trouble. And they brought a kid off the bench, a freshman, a left-handed player that I've never seen play that played well. I mean, that was a heck of a game to beat Eastern, because Eastern's good.
Yeah.
Eastern's really, really good, and for Western to pull that off at home, good win for them.
You know, you've just mentioned 3 kids that are all Kentucky natives that are having a huge impact on their success when they are successful, and huge impact on them being competitive when they're competitive. And it is kind of a fascinating thing, considering much of Stansbury's recruiting has been outside of the state in terms of like coming out of high school recruiting. Yeah. But a lot of the transfer stuff that he's been picking up has been in-state players and that kind of thing. And I'm curious to see how that affects his recruiting going forward, if it does.
If it does, I don't know. I don't know, but this team lacks, where a lot of teams are struggling with all the transfers, trying to figure out rotations and minutes and so forth. The roles on Western's team is pretty simple. Mm-hmm. I mean, they were only playing like 7, so it's a simple. I mean, if you're going to play for the most part. If you're one of those 7, you're playing.
Yeah.
And I think there's some benefit to that, but they do need another. They could use one more post and one more in particular guard.
Yeah. Real quick, Purdue landed at the number 1 spot. Baylor's number 2. That's pretty interesting. I think that's the first time Purdue's ever been ranked number 1 in men's basketball, from what I understood. I was listening to something earlier.
I don't know. It's been. I mean, they had some great teams in the past, but Purdue's the biggest team in the country. I mean, they got a 7'4" kid that's legit, and they start. I think they start 7'4", 6'10", and they're rugged and they are good. Baylor's good. I think Duke's good. Gonzaga's lost twice, but I still like them. Yeah,
I mean, they lost to Alabama 91-82.
Yep. Good win for the SEC.
Yeah, and Alabama's been one of those teams in recent years.
Very well coached.
Yeah.
I think his name is Coates, or I'm not Coates, but I've gone blank. But I really like the job that guy's doing.
Yeah, and then as you mentioned, Duke also lost last week to Ohio State after they had beat Gonzaga the week before.
But they're good. They're legit.
Yeah. Anything else about the college basketball?
No, they're kind of in the, for most people, unless you have a local interest, college basketball does not pick up till February, March. They kind of get lost in the NFL and college football and all that other stuff, but it's here.
Yeah, and the WKU women, how did they do last week?
They beat Bellarmine, and Jay Turner and I did that game. They beat Bellarmine by about 9, and then they lost yesterday to Tennessee Tech at home, 74-70. And, kudos go out to Mackenzie Coleman from Metcalfe County. She had 21 points for Tennessee Tech.
Yeah, it looked like she had a pretty good game against them.
Really well.
She was a difficult issue for
them
to deal with.
They had 5 grad seniors. All came back.
Oh, is that right?
All came back. One of them was out with an ACL, but they all came back to win an OVC title. Western Kentucky starts 3 true freshmen, so it's kind of the experience versus the inexperience. But I do think it tells you about the culture. I'll give the credit to the coach of the Tennessee Tech coach. If you've got 5 people that come back for their 5th year, they're probably like the program.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good for them, and maybe they'll make that run in the OVC. Yep. It'll be interesting. They should be, I guess, one of the top teams in that conference.
Them and Belmont, I think.
Yeah. All right, it's Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, John, at the end of the high school football season at the semifinals, a lot of people were kind of pointing out like how lopsided some of the semifinal games were, and a lot of them were, and they were saying, well, so much for the RPI, but I don't know about that because all 6 of the state championship games were pretty fantastic, and that certainly has not been the case most years. I mean, we've had a lot of years where the state championship games were really played the second or third week of the playoffs for a class because the 2 best teams were on the same side of the bracket. And that wasn't really the case this year.
No, they were good ball games, but the only, I guess it's a downside. I don't know if it is a downside, but it's kind of the same traditional teams that not only won, but there's no newcomers up there at all, even playing each other, right?
Right. Yeah, and I think that 5th year thing, the do every year seemed to have had an impact because 3 of the best players that played in the state finals, Isaac Dixon there at Belfry, I mean, that dude ran 45 times for 376 yards.
Belfry won. That's not Beechwood, right? It's Belfry.
Yeah, Belfry.
Yeah, Belfry beat Patuca Tillman, who beat Glasgow. And never threw a pass.
I know. Look, John, they beat East Carter. They ran the ball 54 times and never threw a pass. They are destroying the idea you got to throw the ball to win football.
Well, I guess, but you better have Division I linemen, which they have. You know, they
Yes,
got
usually.
one at UK, one at Louisville. But yeah, I mean, it is old. Of course, the coach is old school, obviously. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they won. That's not, they wasn't even close to the marquee game, but that was the one that is in Glasgow's class.
Yeah.
Give South Warren credit. South Warren and Bowling Green, they're going to win their fair share of 5A. Mm-hmm. And they went up and beat undefeated Woodford County the week before and then knocked off a pretty strong Lexington team who had a couple of UK recruits on that team and beat them sort of handily.
Yeah.
I mean, you just can't score against South Warren consistently.
No, their defense has been fantastic. We talked about this last week with Brandon Smith there. He comes from that defensive tradition. And
maybe I think it's arguable. I mean, definitely South Warren's top 3 in the state, all classes.
Yes.
All classes by far, because you just can't. I mean, they got a Division I quarterback.
Yeah.
But they don't rely on him though. They got a pretty good rushing account, but they just defensively are just lights out.
Yeah. And talking about top 3, I mean, 2 of the teams that played each other in that 2A final, Beechwood and Lexington Christian, I mean, they might be the other 2, or they're in the top 5.
I was thinking Male and St. X are both.
They probably are.
Yeah, 6A teams. That was a shock. Mm-hmm. St. X upsetting Male. Male hadn't really been challenged a lot this year, and St. X give old Coach Wallace from Bowling Green, that's the connection credit. That's a big win. He got his first 6A state title.
Yeah. That was a pretty interesting game. The game during the regular season when they played was a close game.
28-21.
Yeah, so it was a close game. It was expected to be a close game. I still think I figured Mel was going to win.
I do too. Male's nationally ranked.
Yeah, and so that was an impressive win for Kevin Wallace.
Ball
and his
County
guys.
won pretty handily against Johnson Central.
Yes, they did. That was the most lopsided actual final score. I think it was 44-20 or something like that.
And locally, Russellville had a good battle with Pikeville.
Yep.
But came up short.
Yep.
In the Class A. Mm-hmm. And who was 2A?
The 2A was Beechwood beat Lexington Christian in 2A.
Yep, that was a close game.
Yeah, they had they brought back their quarterback, Gavin Wimsett, for his 5th year there.
Well, Russell County had several.
Yeah.
5th year.
Yeah. Russellville did have a bunch. I think I saw a thing, maybe South Warren was the only school that did not have a repeat player because Warren County voted down allowing that to happen. It seems like every other school district or school that was there had allowed that, and all of them had key players that came back. So, I mean, that was an impact on the state finals as well. I mean, I don't know if that made it. I don't know what it made, but it may go back to what you said earlier about being the same.
When the quarterback for Ball County, he was Jaggers. What is his name? Not Jaggers. It was his first name was Jagger, wasn't it?
Yeah, Jagger Jones, I think is his name.
Something like that. I think he was a 5th year too.
Yeah. So I mean that had an impact. Obviously, those players being able to come back and do that. Maybe that would have changed who was in the state finals this year. I don't know. Who knows? Meanwhile, the NFL is I don't know. Has it gotten interesting? I guess it's kind of interesting. Tonight's game is between the Bills and the Patriots, and I think that's pretty interesting because you have the Bills, who were absolutely expected to be one of the best teams in the AFC, and I'm not sure people had any measurement of expectation on the Patriots whatsoever because we didn't know what we were going to get out of Mac Jones. And I think a second thing that a lot of people forgot was how many defensive players last year for the Patriots opted out and didn't play last year who are back this year.
And people forgotten what a great coach Belichick is.
Yeah, I mean, Tom Brady he wins the Super Bowl and everybody starts making that knee-jerk reaction like, oh, it was Tom Brady all along.
And they're winning with a rookie quarterback and the one that nobody wanted.
I know.
Right?
How much?
Fifth quarterback. Nobody wanted him because he didn't move as well as people wanted. But I tell you what, he fits that system. Mm-hmm. He moves enough. He's highly intelligent, obviously, and very accurate, and is playing better than any other of the rookie quarterbacks. Now, he's in a better situation. Yeah. That's what happens when you fall in the draft. You get in a better situation. But I can't say that the other quarterbacks have even come close to playing at his level.
Well, and I mean, how much is Kyle Shanahan kicking himself now, I wonder?
I don't know. He's probably not yet. He's probably thinking
next year when he gets fired, he may be.
Yeah, but they, just Trey Lance is good, and it's reluctant because a lot of the NFL gurus, too, kind of made the same thing. He just came from a program where overthrow at Alabama was easy. Mm-hmm. Well, he was coached by a great coach in college who was tough on him, and he's put in some very difficult environments at Alabama. And you go from Saban to Belichick If you can handle Saban, you can handle Belichick.
Well, I mean, they both come out of the same tradition themselves. Right. I mean, they used to coach together.
And I'm not for sure if New England's not the best team in the AFC.
It is. They are consistently doing what they do. Right. Everybody else is inconsistent. The Chiefs may have finally gotten back on schedule now.
Not offensively. They're terrible right now offensively, but they've got defensively they're playing better. But Mahomes and their offense is nothing like they were.
Yeah. Maybe they changed their identity a little bit because they've gone away from kind of the wild gambling system.
No, I think they're trying that. They're not completing it.
Yeah, well, there's that. Yeah, I mean, when you go back and you look when they won the Super Bowl, their defense had a huge impact on that.
Well, the defense has to play good, but last year when Tampa was winning, their defense was playing good, but their offense was too.
Yeah,
and right now, the Kansas City offense right now is not very good, just like Baltimore's.
Yeah,
Lamar Jackson is not playing well, and I can tell you that because I like him, and he's on my fantasy team, and he's playing terrible.
He is making the kinds of mistakes
he's not hitting open people.
Well, and also he seems to be trying to stretch a play to make a dynamic play and either getting sacked or throwing a bad interception. And he's kind of fitting into that mold of sometimes when you have a great basketball player and they try to do too much because they don't trust their teammates enough. Mm-hmm. He seems to be playing like that at the moment. And I don't know. It's not that he can't do it because we've seen him do it. Early in the season, he was playing exceptionally well. I don't know what has happened to him in terms of why he's suddenly playing like this. Maybe it's the loss of all the running backs, all the injuries. Maybe he thinks he needs to do more.
They didn't have them at the start of the year either.
Yeah, and maybe he's just, I'm trying to do more. But when you look, I mean, I think they are 5-1 in games that basically are like 50-50 games. Like that one, the loss to Pittsburgh yesterday, was the first one of those games they had lost where it came down to the end.
But if you keep putting yourself in those positions, you're eventually going to get bit.
Yeah, and that's exactly what they are doing every week. And then, of course, the Titans are right there record-wise, but I can't have any faith in them without the running game.
They have not played well since losing Henry and so forth. So I think the AFC is wide open. Mm-hmm. I'm not really for sure. I do think New England's going to be around. Yeah. I don't think this quarterback is going to go backwards.
No.
I do think Kansas City would get it together. One thing I'm pretty confident in the NFC, I think Tampa's going to be around because they got the best player. I mean, Tom Brady's – all these other quarterbacks are wildly inconsistent. They're not playing as good. He's just playing tremendous. And I think Green Bay is, much as I've been disappointed in some of the actions of Aaron Rodgers this past year, they're really good, and he's still very, very good.
Yeah, they could be playing in the NFC Championship game for, would it be the fourth straight year if they get there again. It's completely plausible they will be there.
And hosting, but they were hosting last year and didn't take advantage of it.
I know. Yeah, the one moment where you look up and say Aaron Rodgers probably made a mistake. Now, they ended up kicking the field goal after that. We could rehash that. But if he could have scored that touchdown right there before they did that,
run.
All the rest of the discussion is off.
Yeah, just run.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's I think it's an interesting close to the season.
Should be a good game tonight. It's calling for snow. Mm-hmm. Wind, snow.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
a Bill Belichick kind of game.
Yep.
All the ugliness.
Josh Allen can also run it. Should be a good one tonight.
Yeah, I do think it does not determine who will make the Super Bowl, but it will be a measuring stick for both of these teams to see how legitimate they each are, I think. And it could be just an absolutely ugly game because it's going to be tough and ready.
Because of the weather.
Yep. All right, it's Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be back next week.
Thanks for listening, and be sure and join James and John once again next Monday at 4 for the Brown Sports Bag, a local weekly sports machine presented by McDonald's of Glasgow.
Coming soon to your FM dial, this is Fox Sports Radio, WCDS Glasgow, AM 1230.